Welcome to your CARS instructional video. I'm Daniel and I'm going to be taking you through a routine today. Before we get started, let's explain what CARS are. CARS are controlled articular rotation. Articular just referring to the joint, controlled is referring to the way in which we move with that joint, and rotation of course is the plane of movement that we're going through. Now CARS are used for a variety of reasons, including maintaining joint health, gaining control through ranges of motion, rehabilitation, and for assessment. So when it comes to maintaining joint health, by going through a full range of motion every day, we ensure that we own the range that we have. You ever heard of if you don't use it, you lose it? Well, that holds very true when it comes to mobility. If we don't use the range we have, we run the risk of losing that ability to go there. We have something called mechanoreceptors, which respond to mechanical movement. If we don't activate them every day, our body will eventually get rid of them because it's inefficient use of energy. So we make sure that we use our range of motion every day to ensure we're giving many new options to that joint in case we need to suddenly go into a range of motion in a day that we don't usually go to. For example, reaching back to grab a bag in the back seat of a car. If I've gone into internal rotation already in that day, I'm giving my body more options. It's not foolproofing, but it is giving you more options. For rehabilitation, it's very important to get full range of motion back in the joint as soon as possible. Because controlled articular rotations can be varied in their intensity, they're safe to use at all stages of rehab and all fitness levels as well for that matter. So we can use them in early stage rehab to regain that range of motion, which is the first step of really getting a joint back to full strength. We also use it as a screening tool, so myself, if I have an athlete coming, they will always do a CARS routine in front of me. That way we're able to look for any red flags, any issues that may need to be worked on as far as most specific mobility training, or any movements that may need to be avoided that day. This can be due to different reasons such as fatigue or injury, or sometimes that athlete or person just may not have the required range of motion for certain tasks, which is great. It just gives us the idea that we need to move past it to create a more efficient and safer exercise routine for that person. Before we get started on the actual routine, there's just a couple safety measures we need to go through. Now whenever we're going through a range of motion with a joint, we always have an open angle and a closed angle. For example, if I turn my head this way, this is the opening angle because it's getting longer, and this is the closing angle because it's getting shorter, like closing or opening your hand. Now if through any of these movements you experience closing angle pain, so pain on the shortened side, it's very important that you don't push past that pain. It may need to be assessed further, but for the sake of this CARS routine, just avoid that motion altogether. So for example, if I'm going through my neckline and I feel pain here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of that range, or around it. I'm just going to avoid that short angle there. Something else we need to go through before we start is the idea of irradiation, so radiating tension. This is something that weightlifters and powerlifters do really well, but sometimes we're just not 100% sure on exactly what it is. So I'll just explain it to you quickly. What I want you to do is get your own hand. You're going to take your dominant hand and you're going to try and squeeze that hand as hard as you can, but only using the muscles of your hand. Can't generate very much force, right? Now let's use the entire forearm, arm and shoulder together as well to try and crush that hand. You can get a lot more right. Now on this next one, I want you to take a big breath in, create tension through your legs, and we're going to try and squeeze this hand as hard as you can. You're able to create a lot more tension. So that's a radiation. That's using all the other muscles of the body as synergists to help contract the muscle that we're actually using. And whenever we're doing our CARS routine, we always want to maintain a radiation level throughout the entire body that is roughly 20% higher than the amount of intensity that we're doing for the actual CARS routine. For the sake of this routine, we're going to be working around 20%, which means I want about 40% of radiation throughout my body. A usual morning routine will go from anywhere from 10 to 20% intensity. A warm-up, for example, might go from 10 up to 30 or even 40% intensity, and you can use it more as a training stimulus with your CARS routine, right up to 100% intensity, where you really crank down and get as hard as you can throughout your body and really work through some thick air.
To begin our global CARS routine, we're going to start with our neck rotations. Begin by radiating tension throughout the body by clenching the fists, taking a deep belly breath in and squeezing the legs. From here you want to think about drawing the largest circle possible with your chin. Keeping the movement controlled and at one steady pace, try to use as much range as possible without the aid of other joints, being mindful not to work through pain. Tuck the chin before rotating to one side, then flex to the same side before extending your head back. Then rotate to the opposite side, bend to that same side before finishing the rotation back into the start position. Perform 2 to 3 reps on each side as shown in the video. Before performing the trunk rotations, be sure to create irradiation throughout your entire body. Fold your arms in front or give yourself a big bear hug to lock in our scapula and shoulders, And be aware of your hip positioning, as they will often act to compensate for our trunk mobility. For the trunk, we want to think about creating the largest circle possible with the center of our chest as we work through our greatest available range. Again, being mindful of any compensation from the hips, we begin by crunching forward through the thoracic spine before rotating to one side. Then, bending to that same side, we want to start to extend behind us. From here, we will rotate to the opposite side before bending to that side as well. From here, we will return to our start folded position, crunching through the thoracic spine. Try to keep the same pace through each rep and make sure to never work through pain. Again, perform 2 to 3 repetitions in each direction. The scapula will often call on the other joints to fake range of motion. Ensure your tricep stays flexed to keep the elbow locked, and keep your chin tucked to stop any compensation from the cervical spine. Look to create the largest circle possible using your shoulder blades by fully elevating towards your ears, before pulling your shoulder blades together into retraction. Control the downward motion of the shoulder blades before finishing the rotation by pulling the scapula forward. Keep the motion controlled and consistent as you perform 2 to 3 reps in each direction. With each rep, try to gain a little bit more range of motion as you draw a bigger and bigger circle with your shoulder blades each time. Again, ensuring not to work through any pain. The shoulder cars using the glenohumeral joint has a vast range of motion. It is important to stay strict in your movement. Avoid any rotation through the trunk, any bending at the knees or elbows, and avoid any hiking through the shoulder blade. Draw in the largest circle possible with your hand. Begin by lifting the arm into flexion without compensating through the back. Once you reach tension, begin to internally rotate the shoulder by turning the bicep away from the ear to allow you to continue the shoulder car. Continue to internally rotate as you move into shoulder extension, trying to bring your hand behind your back and to your side, finishing with your pinky finger in front. Then reverse the rotation as you extend the shoulder back until the point of tension. From here, externally rotate the shoulder capsule to allow the arm to come up and over the shoulder before finishing with your arm by your side. Again, perform 2 to 3 reps on each side, avoiding any points of pain. Our elbows are responsible for both flexion and extension, as well as pronation and supination. Begin the elbow cars in a supinated position with your palm facing up. Flex your elbows as much as possible before pronating your hand at the top. Be mindful not to allow that movement to come from the shoulder. From here, extend your arm back into a straight position before returning the hand into that supinated position. Perform 2 to 3 reps like this before swapping around the pronation and supination. Our wrist car is designed to show full range of motion at the wrist. To stop any involvement from the elbow, keep my hand held firmly to feel for any compensations. I also demonstrate using my phone to ensure that the forearm isn't turning during the movement. Keeping your palm facing up, work through your full range of motion as you take the wrist through the largest circle possible. Think about drawing that large circle with the center of your hand. You can perform the wrist cards with an open or closed hand. I recommend trying both to see the differences in your range of motion. Perform 2 to 3 reps in each direction, again avoiding any pain. Due to the large hip capsules and strong musculature around them, I perform my hip cards in a quadruped position as it gives me more points of feedback. I use my hand on my lower stomach to provide feedback about the compensations through the spine. As we want to isolate the range of motion at the hip, look to keep your spine still and avoid any bending through the support arm. Begin by lifting the knee and flexing it forward. Then take your knee and foot out to the side as high as possible before trying to lift your heel to the ceiling, maintaining height throughout the knee. Continue rotation around as you come into extension before returning back to your start position. Maintain a consistent bend of the knee as you reverse the process and extend the leg back up before taking it out to the side and dropping your foot back in line with the knee. Return to your start position. With our tibia cars, we're looking at the internal and external rotation capacity of the tibia. Ensuring that there is no movement through the knee or ankle joint, keep your heel planted into the ground to increase the tension. Look to rotate your shin bone from side to side as you perform this task. Try to feel the muscles on the inside and outside of your lower leg work as you perform the cars. To isolate the ankle, lock in any movement from the shin or rest of the leg. Work hard to maintain a controlled and slow reps as you look for any increased tension or loss of tension in the ankle. Take your ankle into its most dorsiflex position with your toes towards your shins before turning towards your pinky toe and coming to a plantar flexion, with your toes reaching for the ground. Then rotate towards your big toe as you continue back to your start position. Our toe cars are designed to see if we can individually control each of our toes as we find connection between our brains and our feet, as well as assess the range of motion available at the big toe as it is essential for normal gait. There are 4 components to the toe cars, beginning by trying to lift the big toe independently of the other 4 toes, before then trying to lift the other 4 toes independently of the big toe. Next we lift all 5 toes before trying to just plant our big toe, and lastly we lift all of our toes before sequentially trying to lower each toe down one by one. Look to keep your weight distribution throughout your foot the same each movement as you continue to perform these in a controlled motion. Perform 2 to 3 reps of each component to complete your toe cars.
So your cars routine can be performed every single day. It's best formed in the morning to prepare you for the day's activities, and it can also be used before a workout as an adequate warm-up to prepare all your joints for all the possibilities that might happen during that session. So if you have any further questions in regards to your cars routine or would like any further details on how to improve your mobility, make sure you send me an email. Peace!